Hi, today I want to show you how you can turn your Wized web app into a real progressive web app that will be able to run on your user's device just like this. You'll be able to see it as the app name taps.io. In the preview, you'll be able to see it like a real app icon, which you can work with using the bookmarking system, and it will open it like a real native app. And this is amazing because if you would normally just bookmark the site, like here, like the example I have in here, it would just normally open the Webflow site in the browser. And we're going to use some JavaScript magic that it will actually recognize the Webflow site as a web app. Because what Wized is doing, Wized is a powerful tool, but Wized is adding web app functionality on top of a Webflow site. So iOS or your mobile device in general is thinking, okay, it's a website, so they just want to bookmark it, so they just expect me to click on here and go to this bookmarked website. They don't know about Wized yet. So what we have to do is we have to add something called a manifest that tells iOS or Android, you know what, this is actually a web app. So if I click on that here, I will open this as a web app and I'll be able to see it and interact with it like a native web app experience. And the wonderful thing is, if I'm going to turn off my internet, and I would just reopen that app, the functionality that is based on JavaScript will still work within the app. Of course, you will not be able to do API calls because they need an internet connection, but you could save them still in variables and do them once you are reconnected to the internet. So this really is an exciting thing. And if I were now to exit that app, I would clear the cache. I would now just get a couldn't load request. And the moment I'm reconnecting with internet, it will automatically load my web app directly in this native web app frame. And the nice way about doing it like this is I'm going to avoid paying the App Store or the Google Play Store 30% of all the purchases I'm processing in my mobile app experience, while still having some sort of offline functionality and being able to configure all the app and all the functionality natively in Wized. So this is really, really, really big. This is exciting. And you can do this in just a few lines of codes in just a few minutes. And I'm going to show you right now how to do that. So let's just switch to the desktop. Hi, so here we are now at the desktop and we're going to go straight into it. So we're going to just, of course, have our app in here in Wized. We need to configure that, but we're just going to go to Webflow right now and we're going to use a wonderful technique. We're going to go into the head code of our project and we're going to add a link with a manifest, so rel manifest. This is what will give the external data that we want to open this as a web app in your mobile device to the mobile device that will be read. And we're going to add another data attribute of Wized for manifest URL into it. We're going to save that. That is it. That's everything we need to add. The code above that here was just some custom CSS for a different project. I'm going to add this in, so you can just ignore that. That is not important. You only need to add this. That's everything you need to do. And now, since the data attribute of Wized we've added into the code is actually a Wized attribute, we will be able to see this manifest URL as a Wized attribute inside the Wized editor. So you are not just limited to adding Wized attributes onto elements, you can just add that on the whole page itself and influence the page while doing that. And this is what we're going to do right in here. So we're now going to create an action. And first of all, before we do that, before we set this manifest URL, we're going to create a variable, a computed variable, because we want this to run the moment the dependencies change on the page. We're going to create this variable called manifest. and we're going to do const manifest JSON. This is the data structure that your mobile device will need to be able to recognize this as a real app, as a progressive web app. So we need to give it a short name. This will be tabs.io. We're going to give this a normal name. It will just be tabs. And we're going to give this a start URL. In this case, we're just going to start with the home URL. But for example, if you want, and you could specify some logic in there, you could, for example, do a query parameter in here if you have a specific mobile version, and you could do ID equals mobile or something like this to only load the mobile version of your web app if you have different responsibilities. But it doesn't need to stop here. You could also add some more JavaScript logic into it to detect if the device is in dark or light mode. And you could, for example, just do a query parameter called mode of light or dark that will then be recognized within your existing Wized setup, that will then change the canvas based on what the device that is being opened in has preset in their settings. So we don't want to do that right now, but I just want to let you know that this is possible. But we just want to start right in here. And then this is where it gets important. We want to do the display as standalone. This will allow us to open this web app like a real app, and we're going to have this in the editor. We have the home icon. We will able to swipe up and see the preview, and we see the app name and the app icon and all of that. This is what the display type of standalone will give us the option to do that. And right here, we're just going to have the background color, which is set to a default of white. And we have the theme color, which is set to a default of dark. You can change this. You can also use Wized variables, or you can connect or talk to the device and see what information it gives you if you want to work with that. And now we have the icons. Most iOS devices will actually use the icon which you're going to set in the side settings of your Webflow project within the web clip, because adding this on the home screen is called a web clip. But it is intended to add this like a bookmark that will open it in the browser. We're just going to add the bookmark here and open it like an app. So it's actually an app clip, basically. But since Webflow is already providing you this infrastructure, you will not need to probably add that within the code if you have the web clip in here. So whatever you want the icon to be visible on iOS devices, you will just be adding the web clip in here, and this will be the icon you see on your device. But for some devices, for some older models, for some specific Android devices, that may not be sufficient enough if they're not on the latest version. So we're also going to manually add the web clip icon in this manifest code, just using the icons, adding like an array, and we're going to select the type for 512 by 512 pixels as an image PNG, and we're just going to load our image URL in here, which is just a normal URL of our app icon, which is actually an old app icon. So I got to replace this later on. But it is not working for iOS devices. Think of it as a security backup. If the web clip cannot be loaded, if this device doesn't support web clips, it will just fall back to this image. So treat it like just a fallback image, just in case. And then we're going to have this function to convert the JavaScript object above into a JSON string. So we turn this in here, this manifest JSON, this one, and we're going to turn it into a JSON string. So we're going to let JSON string equal JSON.stringify, and then we're going to run this function on the manifest JSON, this one. And once we have this turned into a string, we now want to create a blob out of that. A blob is like an URL. Think of it, it's like a file. URL, it's a file that is accessible through an URL that is only stored on our browser, that is not stored on a CDN, that is not stored on this or on that. It is purely mainly purely stored on our browser. And we're going to create this. So we're going to do const blob equals new blob function. We're going to apply this to the stringified version of this one on top, which we defined in this function in here. And we're going to set the type to application JSON so that our front end, as we set the header, can use it. And we're now going to generate a blob URL from the blob. So we're going to take this blob, which we created here, and we're going to have this equal manifest URL, and we're going to do URL.createObjectURL. So this blob, which is just like a file stored on your browser, will now be turned into a URL that is accessible for our front end. So the blob itself is not just the URL. The blob itself is mainly used as an URL, but a blob purely is just the file on the browser. So we're now going to get the link that is within our browser, the URL, the link that is linked to that in our browser. So we're asking it, what is it? And we're going to do this function to get the URL. And then once we got the URL, we're just going to return the manifest URL in here. And if I'm going to open this URL now in my browser, you are going to see that I'm just getting this, manifest code in here. And this is the code that will be able to run as the site is being opened, and that will give the settings that will make it look and work like a mobile app. Yeah, we're just going to close that here. And now it will not work if we're not going to set this application JSON, this manifest JSON file, into our website, into our web app. So what we now need to do is we need to go to the manifest URL, to the manifest we initially added into the header code, and we're going to modify it after we got the application JSON file containing the manifest. So containing the code saying we want this icon, we want it standalone, we want this whole configuration of how we want to have this mobile experience to work within a mobile device. We now need to load this back into the header of our Webflow site, so that the browser knows how to treat it, and that we don't want to treat it like a website, but that we want to treat it like a web app, a progressive web app. So we have this attribute here of Wized manifest URL, and this is the manifest we're setting in the header code. And we're now just doing an action, and we're going to apply it to the attribute of manifest URL. This is the link element which we have set in the header that will manipulate the whole header structure of the page. And we're now going to set an element action on this header link, which will influence the whole page and everything in it, the whole header. And we're going to set HTML attribute of href, and we're going to put we're going to return our v.manifest variable with the manifest URL, this one, in here as the code that will be loaded within the header. And we are now going to just publish our site in Wized, and it will work on our mobile device. So now the question is, why do we need to create a URL for that? Because the way this principle works is we need to set an href in here. But we cannot set an href for a variable, because an href is a link. It is a bit like FinSuite attributes, but in this case, it needs to have the code loaded from a different URL to be able to work in this principle. So we don't want to put it on a CDN because we need an internet connection to load that. We just want to simplify everything and already have this code run in our browser. Therefore, we're going to enable offline functionality, or somewhat of an offline experience for our web clip, for our progressive web app, without having to go through the CMS route, which always needs to have an internet connection to work properly. So this way we're going to build it directly in Wized. We're going to load that already in the browser, and that blob will be available for the next few minutes to hours within that browser, or in this case, within the mobile app frame. And yeah, this is how you're going to do that. And I hope you're going to build a lot of exciting progressive web apps using this principle. And yeah, I wish you all the best in developing that. And thank you so much for all your support, for all your wonderful comments. I really appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much again. I'm excited to see in the comments if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. And yeah, thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.